Hey, it's Jordan. I'm here with Anthony Clark. You are a teacher there in Chicago. You ran for Congress as a Justice Democrat in 2000 and was it 16?
2018.
2018, 2018. And you're running again, which I like because, like Bernie says, Bernie ran a couple times and he lost there in Vermont. A lot of people who become congressmen or senators or dog catcher lose the first time or two. But I like that you're going back at it. So I wanted to start, before we get to your campaign, which is in the 7th District, I mean, there's a new Chicago mayor, but we can't forget the old Chicago mayor, Rahm Emanuel, who if we lived in a sane society where the attention wasn't only on Trump, this guy would have to kind of walk in shame. But now, since he's left, he's getting a column at the Atlantic. He's got now a gig on ABC News. And Rahm Emanuel wrote a piece the other day about keeping the elites in check, which I found comical. Can you kind of tell the audience? Because it's not what Rahm Emanuel did in Chicago is going on in a lot of other places, too. Can you kind of talk about what people should know about Rahm Emanuel's legacy, and the obviously Chicago was in a ditch before him, but how far further have things gone in the negative?
Yeah, I mean, it's first and foremost, who knew covering up a murder would mean promotions? Would mean moving up in the world. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're referring to Laquan McDonald, 16 shots and a cover-up. Rahm Emanuel played a direct role in essentially, protecting the police department, trying to circumvent accountability, and essentially sweep the murder under the rug. So, like you stated, I'm still trying to fully comprehend how in this society, particularly, and I don't want to go too deep, but particularly, if you're a white male or, so on and so forth, how you can essentially fail at your job. If you're not familiar with Chicago, you can Google this. The last few years we've led or been number 2 or 3 in the nation in regard to citizens leaving our state. And this is the state of Illinois, but particularly in Chicago, we've had the highest numbers of individuals exiting, the state of Illinois. The Austin community, for example, used to be the largest community, which is in the 7th congressional district in Chicago. And, numbers are steadily declining just due to lack of investment, just due to continuous high crime rates, due to, school closures, mental health facility closures, lack of job opportunity. We could go on and on. But essentially, Rahm Emanuel, I consider him a neolib, a centrist Dem. And we saw what those policies meant for black and brown and poor people within the city of Chicago, to where TIF districts were created to invest and infuse, downtown districts, downtown areas where primarily tourists and, primarily upper class individuals lived, saw growth, saw prosperity. And you can essentially, cross a street. You can essentially just change one area code or zip code and everything changes for citizens in the city. They launched a war on poverty. Our homeless population continues to struggle. Data shows, based upon a lot of the activists that are in the street, we're hovering around 80,000. And I'm not making this number up. 80,000 individuals that are homeless. And that number also accounts for individuals that double up, so may live with another family, so on and so forth. So as a black male, in the city of Chicago, his reign, it was long overdue to be done. I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I heard everybody was disappointed with the end of it.
I want to ask you about, you look at Chicago and the guy you lost to in 2018, Congressman Danny Davis. It's real machine politics there. You have people in there since the beginning of time. It's kind of like a boys club, backroom deals, run City Hall. And, I guess, you tell me if I'm wrong, the same people come out and vote all the time, but there's a lot of discouraged people in the minority community that don't come out and vote. I mean, you lost by a significant margin, but you still got a lot of votes in 2018. You got 28,000, almost 29,000 votes there. And Danny Davis, who you're facing again, is a longtime fixture there. So can you kind of talk about what did you what did you accomplish, do you feel, in your last election? And what do you think you've learned then that you could cross over to this go-around to take down, I mean, a really entrenched establishment congressman there?
Definitely, that's a great question. And for me, I'm a huge boxing fan, huge Muhammad Ali fan. And the way I compare 2018 to 2020 is, in 2018, I was nominated to run for office by Justice Democrats in brand new Congress. Individuals from the community nominated me to run. I'm a teacher, nonprofit founder and director, small business co-owner. We do a lot of work on the ground. And based upon that work, that I, do with the community, they nominated me. I accepted the nomination. I never saw myself becoming a politician, but why I accepted the nomination was because I felt this was a way to truly take what we were doing on the ground at a micro level, treating symptoms, expand upon it to a macro level, and actually attack root causes. But what I didn't, and what I did understand and wasn't prepared for, is, like you stated, the nuance involved in running for office and how the establishment, the DCCC, and how incumbents, how they basically come together and engage in action, small and large, to ensure that candidates like myself have very little chance of success, particularly in a corrupt city like Chicago, to where, let's be honest, the Democratic Party benefits from voter suppression. I think often we, of course, point fingers at the Republican Party, historically, Jim Crow laws and so on and so forth, what's been done in Georgia, so on and so forth. But on the ground, we have not grown, as a people. We have not grown as communities. They benefit from essentially counting on the older generations who, know the incumbent, have comfortable name recognition. The incumbent slogan when he ran last time was "the name you know." They count on the older voting population primarily to vote and push them through. Meanwhile, there's zero effort to engage the younger voting populations, to really be boots to the ground and really understand, the younger constituency and what's needed to move, our cities forward. So we dealt with, intimidation, verbally, physically. We dealt with yard signs being stolen, thousands of dollars in yard signs just being ripped up from the ground from people's homes and out in the community, to basically stunt my ability to build my own name recognition. They challenged our signatures. They challenged our petitions. That cost us $10,000 in months. And then if you look at the Democratic Party as a whole, they denied us access to ban. We had to go through a month, over 6-month process to just gain access to viable voter information. So we're essentially out knocking on doors and not necessarily knowing if, the information we had on our sheet was accurate. That occurred as well. So it just went on and on. They didn't want us to have debates. They pushed back at putting us together. So it was just a multitude and a multi-level approach to, suppressing a candidate like myself. And I think we saw that, with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others across the nation. This is tried and true, for the DCCC and the establishment party. They have a blueprint to just try to silence and marginalize anyone who dares, challenge their power.
So what's interesting to me about Chicago, and when I was there, and you helped me speak with a lot of the activists there, but there's so many activists, but there's also kind of, I don't want to say divisions, but kind of tribes within activism in Chicago. You got people that have been activists for a long time, 40s, 50s, and then you got new people in their 20s and early 30s or whatever. So not even all the activists are on the same page. But you were talking about, and I think what Ocasio-Cortez did fairly well, was she went into areas that don't typically vote. And she had somebody who was basically asleep at the switch. He was just assuming he was going to win. I remember we spoke in the past about how big that district is to really canvass. So how do you reach younger voters and voters that just stop giving a crap? Because you got almost 29,000 votes, which is a great starting point. Right. And now, hopefully, you've learned a few lessons to anticipate what they're going to do early for kind of, I guess, counter that. How do you target specifically new voters?
Yeah. The district is huge. The 7th Congressional District spans from Inglewood to downtown Chicago, all the way into the western suburbs, it's like Hillside. So, again, in 2018, we weren't prepared. I'll be honest with you. We were new, we were fresh, we had a message, but we really didn't know, again, what went into, truly running an effective campaign. So we failed to reach voters in 2018. I'll be honest and say we did 0 mailers in 2018. So, going through that experience, learning from our failures, having data now, the 28,000 people that did believe in the movement, building, stronger coalitions. I'm in other communities beyond the base that I have in Oak Park. We built relationships. So this is not just running. It's not like I went dormant and I went to hibernation and now, it's time to run again, like many of the incumbents do. You don't see them until it's election season. We've been in the communities, boots to the ground, consistently, prior to 2018 and after 2018. So we're going to utilize those coalitions, the wonderful individuals like Best of Proviso that I work with in the Maywood and, Proviso Township community, individuals like the Austin Family Community Center in the Austin community. Like, we have healthy relationships. So it's not just myself. It's not just volunteers or those that are officially on the campaign. It's actually community members that live and work within those areas that I've been fighting, as you stated. And I think another thing that's important to mention, based upon what you asked, is I think one of the biggest cons that has ever been sold to oppressed classes, and when I say oppressed classes, I'm talking black, brown, women, so on, whatever you could be identified as, with a social construct, whether it's race or gender, because they're social constructs, to keep you oppressed. Individualism oftentimes creates a narrative of people are hesitant to work together, in a sense, or it's about hustling the system or hustling the issues to prop an individual up. And I think with me, it's interesting to kind of speak of myself, but I believe that individuals that I come in contact with, they recognize the genuine nature of our movement. At the end of the day, this is not about me. This is about a belief that in order to truly empower the people, we have to build intersectional coalitions. And we have to understand that throughout history, within a capitalistic society, they've utilized social constructs like race, gender, age, ability, sexual orientation to keep us divided. Because to me, at the end of the day, it's truly about classes. You have the super wealthy, have the one percenters, and then you have us, struggling day to day, struggling every day, and we're divided within ourselves. So we've really tried to put in an effort to, preach and discuss the importance of coming together and recognizing that the by design nature is to keep us separated. Because if we unite, black, brown, straight, gay, lesbian, trans, poor, young, old, so on and so forth, and truly unite, there's nothing we can't do. So I think we've really put in effort as well. I think the individuals that I built relationships with, they appreciate that. They believe in the movement also. So in 2020, we're really moving forward, not only, with greater capacity within the multiple communities within the district, but greater belief from individuals that may not have necessarily worked together in the past, because they understand, again, we're stronger together. And, if we remain divided and if we continue to try to push individualism instead of collectivism, we're going to fail.
Do you plan on, I know you did some of this in 2018, but even since then, I mean, Medicare for All was polling better than ever. So is free public college, Fight for 15, even wealth tax, all things that my good guess is someone like Congressman Danny Davis not gives either lip service to or is definitively against. Do you plan on making that more of an issue? Because at the end of the day, we don't know how it's going to play out nationally, who's going to be the candidates. But, I mean, the momentum is moving towards the left. And you were running, the election was in 2018, but the real ground hustle was 2017 and 2018. Do you plan on going, I don't want to say going after, but really drawing that contrast more? Because obviously something like Medicare for All would lift people in Chicago, particularly communities of color, more so than in many other places.
Yeah, great question. I think for me, what's most important about this race, it's a situation, it's a movement, but I'm going to be myself in 2020. I think when I ran before, you don't know, you just don't know what you don't know, and you're kind of hesitant. You feel like at times, quite honestly, you have to pander or you have to tell people what they want to hear in order to gain their support. The position I'm coming from in 2020 is I'm going to be myself and I'm going to let you know what I believe in. I'm not giving lip service like the incumbent who often, the narrative is, they vote the right way. But what about fighting the right way? So what I believe in is at the forefront, as you stated, single payer, Medicare for all, college and trade for all. The Green New Deal is extremely important. Addressing housing issues with the homelessness situation and our homeless veterans. Housing should be a human right. We have to address the affordability of homes. Look at what's going on with HUD right now and Ben Carson, who is carrying packages of Oreos around, thinking it's a joke that they're preying upon, the underprivileged. So we could go on. And I think, again, we have to be extremely bold. And one of my platform pieces that I think also kind of ties into the importance of this race is the decriminalization of sex work. And again, the legalization of cannabis with the focus on racial justice. We were the only candidate in the 2018 race pushing for the legalization of cannabis. The incumbent was not. But now, again, that fight continues, and we're taking the fight to the establishment. We have to have a focus on racial justice because I think, when anything becomes legal and regulated, oftentimes the individuals that are frozen out are the individuals that are always been oppressed, black, brown, poor, etc. So regulation comes with issues. So we have to be purposeful in how we legalize. And as well, looking at the decriminalization of sex work, I personally believe that you cannot be pro-labor, you cannot be pro-women's rights if you don't include sex work. Sex work is work. I'm encountering black women, trans women, white women, young and old, who truly are falling under the weight of prohibition. We know prohibition, whether it's alcohol, weed, drugs, etc., does not work. It's not effective. So we truly have to address this issue and start treating root causes. And again, by decriminalizing sex work, I truly believe that you also will positively impact sex trafficking. Because again, being reactive and prohibitive, you push individuals further and further into the underground, and that's not going to solve anything. So we're truly being bold with our policy points, our policy issues, and we're truly going to stand on our principles. And we're not going to be afraid to tell people what we believe in and how we feel. And one thing that we definitely don't believe in is centrism and just essentially providing lip service.
And I want to ask you, because you have Trump, he likes when he talks about this magical economy, which I think we both know is magical for hedge fund managers and pharmaceutical executives and, the wealthy. The number is so low in large part because a lot of people have dropped out of the workforce. But he has also been adding in there, the lowest African-American unemployment and so on and so on. Well, I've been to Chicago, Flint, Detroit, many areas that are predominantly African-American, and I see a lot of people working 3 jobs. I see a lot of people living in squalor with those 3 jobs. And I see a lot of people just giving up and, frankly, whether it's opioids and other things, just kind of struggling. Can you kind of talk about the realities on the ground? People, it's always talked about, the gang violence and, black on black crime and this and that. But there's a lot of people in Chicago, particularly people of color, that are just basically jobless. And that's before we're facing, I think, a more and more automation economy. So can we kind of dispel what Trump's talking about and you give us an insight?
Definitely. I think it's interesting to think about that connection. So many people, rightfully so, are focused on Trump. There's talk of impeachment, want Trump out of office. But one thing that I tell individuals is if we're truly going to have a revolutionary mindset and truly move forward as a people, bringing power back to the people, we have to move away from constantly paying attention to and treating symptoms. Because if you're constantly looking at a symptom like Trump or a symptom like gun violence or a symptom like, unemployment or, sex work, so on, that's a symptom. Well, sex trafficking, that's a symptom. We're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to move forward. We need to position ourselves and pay attention to root causes. And I think what you brought up and you mentioned is Trump is a symptom of the root causes of, again, a capitalistic society essentially built on white supremacy. This nation was built on genocide. This nation was built upon slavery. In order to maintain a capitalistic system, you have to have a top and a bottom. You have to have an unemployed. You have to have a poor. In order to maintain capitalism. Again, in a free market, what does a free market mean to individuals that are essentially not free? Slavery by a new name. So when you look at what's going on in Chicago, you have to account for, like you stated, I have parents. I'm a high school teacher. I have parents working 3 or 4 jobs that can never come see their child in a play. They can never come see their child in sports activity, come to a parent-teacher conferences because they're constantly working. We don't even think about Lyft and Uber, whatever you may think about them as individual companies, how individuals now are trying to, somewhat further empower themselves with creative job opportunities. So Lyft and Uber is now a viable employment avenue. As you stated, the opioid epidemic. So many individuals have been unemployed for so long and on government assistance, they're essentially falling out of the data pool. How do you collect the data? How do you know who's unemployed? Well, if individuals are no longer identifying themselves or no longer applying for job opportunities, sometimes they fall out of that data pool. So the high levels of poverty that we're seeing in the Chicago community, the high levels of unemployment, we're at 16.4% unemployment. That's 4 times the national average. 4 times the national average. The amount of high school closures, middle school closures that exist, the mental health facility closures. It's a real issue. And I think we have to stop looking at, perfect example, you've been here. You see it on the news where you have 30 or 40 students, high school students going downtown Chicago, and then everybody gets afraid and says, oh, these teens, they're rowdy and so on and so forth. Again, that's a symptom. Why are they downtown? Why are they roaming Michigan Avenue, which you care so much about? Because you haven't invested in giving them other viable opportunities. Why is the gun violence so high? Because let's understand how lobbyists have created a world where we're valuing profit over human life. Gun violence should be treated as a public health issue. We really should be funding the CDC and studying these issues to truly understand what leads to mass shootings, which leads to the everyday to day shootings that many of our black and brown students are engaged in. And we haven't even necessarily discussed on a national level how 73% of the mass shootings that occur in America are predominantly by alt-right, white supremacist organizations. Domestic terrorism basically are white males,
right?
Domestic terrorists. We're not even looking at that. So again, in Chicago, we're a hardworking city. Chicago and Chicagoland area, we have so many individuals that truly care, that are boots to the ground and are fighting, and they just need support. And we're not necessarily getting that. So what do you expect when throughout history, if you talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Rosewood, when oppressed classes of people, if you want to talk about black folk, built up communities, built up their own banks, built up their own economies, and they weren't dependent upon the white man. They weren't dependent upon the white-led government. They were burned down. They were destroyed. So how is that so much different from now, in a sense, to where the criminal justice system is used to disproportionately place black and brown and poor individuals within these prison systems for profit? Our schools, Rahm, Emanuel, and others have been pushing for the privatization of our schools, charter school industries, which I don't support, because they want to divest from public schools, which primarily serve black, brown, and poor individuals.
Right.
So again, it's just being a war being waged, and I think we're seeing the fruit of that inaction and lack of labor in regard to supporting us.
And obviously Ocasio-Cortez, Tim Canova in 2016, a lot of these high-level down-ballot races are kind of getting attention because their themes very much connect with what's going on nationally. Well, when you look at nationally right now, it was amazing to me. You have Nancy Pelosi, in my view, playing theatrics. Every other day now is a press conference. Trump's a cover-up, this and that. I don't like Trump, but at the end of the day, she did a press conference today all about Trump. No mention for the Democratic Party's leadership that McDonald's workers were striking all over the country. No mention of the Fight for 15. No mention that it just came out in New York that text messages show the police officer that choked out Eric Garner was told no big deal by by his lieutenant above him. Basically no big deal. You did it the right way. So basically, these core issues that we're talking about, we don't have any leadership for the Democratic Party other than, I'd say, Bernie, a few people. So trickling down, if you don't have any leadership from the national party on these local issues, does that create does that hamstring you and harm you, or does that give you an opportunity? Because some candidates don't want to go too hard against the Democratic machine and don't want to call them out by name. They just want to focus more on a positive campaign. Do you feel like you have to take on the machine more, or are you going to focus truly on local issues?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know why I thought about this when you were speaking, but my late Grandma Lil, she told me when I started dating and, I had my heart broken, and, I've broken hearts in my lifetime as well. She told me, if you truly love someone or care about someone, one of the first things you cannot be afraid to do is to, one, tell the truth, and two, hold them accountable. Tell the truth and hold them accountable. So I believe that the Democratic Party's mantra, since the 60s when, blacks transitioned into the Democratic Party with the New Deal, so on and so forth, focusing on Trump, focusing on Russia, consistently provides them an opportunity to, one, not tell the truth, and two, not hold themselves accountable. And as someone who truly loves the individuals on the ground, loves our community members, and I consider myself a Democrat, I believe it's my responsibility as well as others to hold our party accountable and to speak truth to power. So while it's harmed overall communities and while it's harmed overall individuals, if I truly love the individuals I'm trying to serve, it's important that I call for accountability. And I think we have to say that the Democratic Party has failed. The Democratic Party has failed to truly empower oppressed classes of people. It's easy again, for the Democratic Party. We talk about Trump, we talk about racism. We can even go to sexism and misogyny. I just remember it was a year or two ago when it came out that, sexism was rampant, within the Democratic Party as a whole. And, they were paying with funds and so on and so forth. But again, let's focus on Trump. Let's not pay attention to what we're doing. So we could go on and on. It's important that we hold ourselves accountable. I look at it as an opportunity because I'm not only talking a revolutionary mindset in regards to what's wrong. I point out what's wrong, and then I talk about, okay, what can we do to fix it? Our children are ingesting lead. Our children have chronic asthma due to the pollution. That's wrong. I feel the Democratic Party has failed to address this issue, but now let's look at the Green New Deal. We have individuals on the ground that have zero hospitals to go to, that are dying at home because of lack of health care. That's wrong. The Democratic Party wants to push for public options and, the ACA and, let's step back from single-payer Medicare for all. No, the solution is single-payer Medicare for all. The solution is drawing a line in the sand and not playing that middle ground centrism and demanding revolution, demanding change and empowerment of all people. So I truly look at it as an opportunity. And I think I'll end with this, with this question. This is why you've seen, I think, the Republican Party who pushes individualism, who pushes grab yourself up by the bootstraps because they know it's a disadvantage. While they call for, the Blexit, black people leave the Democratic Party, so on and so forth, because they sense that there's many individuals that are unhappy with the Democratic Party and how they're being served or not being served. So we need to truly pay attention to this, get our stuff together, because I'll be quite honest with you, Jordan, when I'm knocking on doors and I encounter a mother or a father who is living in a community where a food desert exists, who may have lost a son or daughter or a family member to gun violence, who doesn't know where if their job is going to be there tomorrow, they're not making a living wage. Do you think they really want to talk about Russia? No. They don't want to talk about what can we do to empower them so then they can move forward and not have to seek help again, where they can help themselves. So I think that's what's important to think about.
And I wanted to ask you, in a post-Jason Van Dyke world, he was the officer who shot Laquan McDonald 16 times. He's, I think he was convicted of second-degree murder. Has anything changed as far as the police department? I think I know the answer, but obviously the police union came out against this, which is unbelievable to me. But has there been any attempt at reform? I know that when I was there last, they were pushing for AR-15s to walk around with. What has Jason Van Dyke's conviction done as far as police relations?
I think it's interesting. I believe his conviction has just further polarized the issue in the sense of you have, police officers and those who believe, Blue Lives Matter, further galvanizing behind officers like Jason Van Dyke and behind, the Blue Wall. We've been having protests. I actually was part of a protest where we went to the Fraternal Order of Police headquarters and demanded change. And it's interesting to think about, when I'm talking about police accountability. We're called, haters of police. We're called, racist somehow and so on and so forth. I don't want to see anyone die. I don't think anybody on my side wants to see anybody die. We want to see people live. And I think true accountability, if you want to be a true police officer protecting and serving, that's why we're pushing for CPAC, a citizens community accountability, an oversight committee. You need to build relationships within your community. But I think, again, we're focusing on symptoms all the time. It doesn't matter how much training. Rahm Emanuels was pushing for the $95 million allocation for, a new police academy and so on and so forth. You can have all the training in the world. You can have RoboCop walking the streets, Ed 209. If you don't address the root causes of just bigotry and hatred that exists, again, within the society, where you have officers serving in communities where they have zero stake in the community, where they look at individuals that they're supposed to be protecting and serving as less than, as less than human, as the adversary. You know, how many officers are we seeing putting up, white supremacist signs, and, we're catching them on their social medias, like you say, laughing and joking and just basically making light of, police violence. It's a real issue, and I think we have yet to address that. Of course, there's issues on the ground, police brutality, so on and so forth. We haven't even really scratched the surface. I was talking about decriminalizing sex work earlier. We haven't even scratched the surface of how police brutalize individuals with sexual assault and rape that occurs right along the lines of, shootings, because again, it's that power dynamic that exists. So I think we're in like an interesting period now. Of course, Jesse Smollett, or I think it's Jesse, again, I'm pronouncing his name possibly, that occurred. So I think that further created polarization. But we're fighting, and we're not fighting to say, police officers must die. I want all police officers to live, but I want all police officers to also believe in my right to live. And individuals that look like me, their right to live, and come together and really invest in community policing models. And I don't think we're getting that from police departments. I think they look at it again as an attack on them. So they're galvanized around essentially supporting corruption. So we're going to continue to fight. There's wonderful individuals better than me in regards to that area that I'm supporting, and I, will march and stand in solidarity with on a daily basis. And we're going to just continue to fight until we're valued.
And how can people find out more? This won't be the first. No, this definitely won't be the last time we speak. Got a long way to 2020, but how do people find out more about your campaign? I'm definitely sure you're trying to find volunteers in the area, and obviously, a couple bucks helps too.
Oh, definitely. Everything helps. So our website is www.voteanthonyclark.com. That's Clark, C-L-A-R-K. So www.voteanthonyclark.com. You can also check me out on my social media accounts, Anthony B. Clark, again, C-L-A-R-K. And truly, just learn more about the movement. It's bigger than me. Elections are going to come and go, but if we truly can create a revolutionary movement, that will remain. So yes, we need volunteers. We need individuals spreading the message. We need $1 here, $5 there, because we're 100% grassroots movement. We're accepting zero corporate PAC money, but it'll all help us take the fight to the establishment and take the fight to bring power back to the people.
And I think also people in the area should know you're pretty much at everything. I know you're going right now to a reproductive rights event because the attacks on abortion. So you're in the community. So they could go beyond just watching this. They'll probably see you at many events.
No question. Have to be an ally in verb form. We have to be boots to the ground. It's not enough just to post. It's not enough to say something. We have to be ready to get our hands dirty and fight. So I will be going to this event. We're pushing for the Illinois to pass the RHA, Reproductive Health Act. Of course, nationally, we see the attacks that are being going on, the war being waged against women. It's not about babies. In my estimation, they're just using abortion to attack and disempower women. So we have to recognize, again, the by design approach. Yeah, come out there, march with me, fight with me. Let's do it.
Cool, man. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.